Well, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of On Deck with Avoya, your weekly travel update. I'm your host, Chris Greene, Director of Network Expansion, and we very much appreciate your time for tuning in today. Wow, there are so many positive things going on in the travel industry right now. I mean, more and more reports out showing a change in spending habits, prioritizing experiences over material goods. And guess what? That only spells good news for those in the leisure travel industry. And it all comes at a perfect time too, right? As May is Travel Advisor Appreciation Month. And we have a great show to kick off Travel Advisor Appreciation Month today with a Meet the Industry segment with Steph Lee, founder of Host Agency Reviews. Steph will join us for a great discussion about that powerful resource and how you can get the most out of a visit to Host Agency Reviews and their website, all of their great resources. And while we've got her here, we're going to pick Steph's brain on the current state of the industry, what she thinks makes a great travel advisor, because she interacts with quite a few of them. And we look forward to getting that Q&A going here with Steph Lee in just a few minutes for today's On Deck with Avoya. We'll also scan this week's travel news headlines and focus the spotlight on a few key stories for our Eye on the Industry segment. Some of the stories we are following this week include a new report about how robust summer travel will actually be this summer across the pond to Europe. Let's just say the numbers are up, way up. We'll discuss the ASTA Global Convention wrapping up today in San Juan, Puerto Rico, including ASTA's plan to publish a list of travel suppliers that pay you your commissions faster. And we're going to wrap up our segment today with a travel advisor appreciation update from our friends at AMO Waterways. All of that coming up here very shortly. We also have lots of promotion news to cover, including our waived fee promotion for high-end experienced agents and our ongoing military appreciation promotion. We'll highlight the travel agent education powered by Avoya platform, spend a moment discussing Avoya Travel's best-in-class resources, all of our social media channels, and how you can stay in touch and make sure you have all the ways to reach out and start your journey with Avoya Travel, and hopefully soon be members of the Avoya Travel Network. Okay, let's kick it off. This week's episode of On Deck with Avoya, your weekly travel update, and a story from Travel Weekly. After a very busy 2022, travel to Europe is expected to rise 55% this summer, according to travel insurance vendor Allianz Partners. Now, Allianz analyzed flight itineraries for trips of 5 to 8 days between Memorial Day and Labor Day, that traditional summer getaway period. For travelers heading to Europe, about 25% are headed to London, always the most popular destination. And just like last year, Paris and Dublin came in second and third, with Rome taking fourth and Reykjavik fifth. Now, the top 10 had a couple of newcomers, at least one. Edinburgh, Scotland was sixth, Athens, then Amsterdam, Lisbon, and Milan making the list for the first time since Allianz began doing this study back in the summer of 2015. For the first time ever, Barcelona knocked out of the top 10. European travel exploded last summer after 2 years of pandemic restrictions. Last year, you might remember, Allianz reported a 600% increase in Americans traveling to Europe. As far as air travel within the United States, Orlando is the most popular destination. Allianz found that most American travelers will fly to a U.S. destination at some point this summer. Of the 1.6 million flight itineraries they analyzed, 73% were for domestic trips, 27% for international travel, and domestically, Orlando always the favorite. Internationally, Cancun always tops the list. Now let's just hope the airlines can keep up with this demand. The ASTA Global Conference is wrapping up today in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and one of the initiatives that ASTA has discussed this week is a plan to help travel advisors get their hard-earned commissions faster. This story also from our friends at Travel Weekly. ASTA getting ready to publish a list of suppliers that pay travel advisors commissions in a timely manner. This, according to CEO Zane Kirby, said that yesterday during the ASTA Global Convention. Speaking at a press conference, Kirby, following a meeting in the Society's Consortium Committee, which endorsed the following verbiage to be published with the list. We recognize these suppliers for timeliness of commission payments within 30 days of final payment and encourage all suppliers to adopt this practice. According to Kirby, ASTA is hoping to encourage more suppliers to pay advisors their money faster. The full list is forthcoming. ASTA is currently preparing it while making sure it is comprehensive. Now, this is just for me personally, but for this really to make a difference, you're going to have to be aligned with a host or a franchise partner that also plays ball and has a policy for getting you your commission payments, they don't hold up your money. Some do. At Avoya Travel, we're proud to say that when we receive the commissions from the vendors, you receive your commissions. Our policy, if it comes in during our accounting week, you get your money the following week via direct deposit. It's a key differentiator in our business model versus some of our competitors, and I highly recommend having that question on your list when you do your research. And finally, in a story we sourced from Travel Pulse, river cruise line Avoya Waterways is celebrating travel advisor appreciation in May by announcing 7 new seminars on the river cruises hosted by various business development managers for Avoya Waterways. This includes early opening of 20 FAM cruises on dates extending through November of this year. Travel advisors attending Webinar Wednesdays throughout the month will be entered into a weekly drawing for a European or a Mekong River cruise for 2. On June 7th, a balcony stateroom will be awarded to one travel advisor who attended all 5 sessions. In a statement, Kirsten Karst, co-founder and executive vice president of Avoya Waterways, since the founding of Avoya Waterways over 20 years ago, travel advisors have been the heart of our company, contributing over 95% of our sales. We express appreciation to our travel partners all year long with special incentives, marketing support, and training opportunities. But the month of May is always a special time for our team to go above and beyond and say thank you in other ways. At Avoya Travel, we enjoy a fantastic relationship with our friends at Avoya Waterways. In fact, you may remember we had Gary Murphy, one of the co-owners of Avoya, as a special Meet the Industry guest last year. I believe that was in October. Time for our favorite segment of the show, and I'm always happy to welcome in a new guest to our program, especially someone as vital to travel advisors as our guest is today. Host Agency Reviews is really a vital resource for anyone new to the travel industry or anyone looking to make a switch in host or franchises. Now, I've been fortunate enough to be a guest several times for various segments hosted by Host Agency Reviews. I always love interacting with Steph Lee and her staff, and it's nice to have the tables kind of turned today and have Steph as our featured guest. So please help me in welcoming in our feature Meet the Industry guest this week, Stephanie Lee, founder of Host Agency Reviews. Steph, so great to have you on Deck with Avoya today.
Chris, I am so happy to be here. And I love listening to your voice. I know I say this every single time, but it's just so relaxing. You just got such a great radio voice.
I appreciate that. Yeah, definitely a radio voice, not a face for television, but it is what it is, right? So, before we jump into our main topics, Steph, can you give me a quick overview of you, your history in the travel industry, and how you came to found Host Agency Reviews?
Yes. So I grew up I always like to say I grew up in the travel industry, although the reality of it is my family they started their home-based travel agency when I was in high school. I think I was maybe in 10th grade. So it was later in my life that they started it. But like many people that have their work for their family businesses, then they swear they're never going to work for them, which is what I did. I went to college and I would help out every now and again with my parents' company and at the summers and things like that. Did my own thing for maybe 5 or 6 years and then joined their company and really found that selling travel is not my thing. But what was my thing was I loved host agencies. They were just starting to come out and really start growing. And I thought it was such a cool business model and perfect for people that were in my age group that were looking to have remote jobs. And so I grew their host agency division. And then after about 5 years of really being entrenched in it, I saw this huge need. At that time, there was this worry about the industry graying out and no one was coming into the industry. I was one of the youngest people there. And I was really frustrated because I saw there was just a lack of information online on how the industry works, how you become a travel advisor. And if you did find something, oftentimes it would be an MLM or something very skeezy that if I looked at it, I would be like, I don't want to join that industry. Like, do they know we're not in 1995 anymore? So the goal with Host Agency Reviews was to really be an educational component so that if people were Googling questions about how to become a travel advisor, there would be a reputable source within the industry that looked decent, and also the host agency directory that we have. That was another problem I had. Was I was on the sales calls all the time and people would be saying, what's the difference between you and And then they would name this MLM, and I would be like, oh, they can't even tell the differences between those. And so having something that would help vet the good host agencies versus the bad host agencies and kind of help people navigate that was the goal behind HAR.
Hey, so going backwards really quick before we move forward, and you kind of, talked about growing up in the travel business. How did that kind of change your perspective on life?
It's funny is, so we didn't travel growing up. When my mom she's just kind of does her thing when she decides she wants to do something. She'd started multiple businesses beforehand. And one day she was like, I'm going to start a travel agency. And we had been on a plane once as a family. And I think my mom had maybe been on a plane one other time before that. And we're like, all right. So
That's hilarious.
I know, it's really funny. But she started and she did really well. And so for me, I probably didn't start really traveling until I was in my 20s, my early 20s, after I finished college and kind of went off. But I think what the seed that it planted with me, my parents starting the agency, is it really helped. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial culture. Like I said, my mom starts lots of businesses, and my dad was a firefighter. And if you know anything about firefighters, because they work these 3 days on, 2 days off, they're always getting weird jobs. So my dad had a t-shirt printing business on the side for the firefighters, and my grandma had a flower nursery, and my grandpa had a meat shop business, and my other grandpa on the other side had a Chinese restaurant. So we never had normal schedules in my family. And but really being able to work within the agency, because eventually it moved out of the house and became a storefront, that was really key for me in kind of understanding managing employees and more of the less sexy things about starting and running a company, the accounting behind it, how to keep track of your credit card expenses, that you need to pay quarterly taxes, all of this stuff that no one ever talks about. And so that was really, really helpful for me. But it also, really fed my love for travel, and gave me so many opportunities to take, amazing trips that I, as a not very well off 20-year-old, would be able to take.
For sure. Absolutely. I think I would get along really well in your family too. I love that mindset. I bet your first lemonade stand, though, was amazing.
It was selling brooms at my parents' farm made from the hay and sticks. I think I was selling them for 50 cents. They were I don't know, that they weren't actual brooms. They were decor brooms if anyone wanted them.
Sure. But I mean, it goes to the heart of that whole being an entrepreneur is just something that's inside of you. Now, as we flash forward a little bit and get back on host agency reviews, talk to me about some of the main features and really what that does for somebody that's looking at your website to try to differentiate between the various, host agencies and franchises.
Well, I'll start by saying it's difficult to wrap up host agency reviews in a succinct way. Our elevator speech is more for super skyscrapers, because there's so much we cover on the site. So we talked about the directory where we list all the host agencies, and we also list franchises and consortia in there. And that's a great place for advisors that are wanting to learn more about the host agencies. So they can read through the different reviews that are on there. They can read there's question and answers tabs on each profile for the host agencies, so they can see how they're answering them and really get a feel for, I think the reviews and the way host agencies respond to reviews can really give you a feel for the culture of the company, because you'll notice people answer very differently within there, and how quickly they're answering. It gives all sorts of metadata. So if you know that you want to go with a Travel Leaders Network host agency, you can filter that out. You can see that information. You can see the size. So the directory is a huge portion of the site, but then there's other things. So our blog is kind of the educational component I alluded to earlier, where my goal was, when someone was typing in anything that had to do with having to become a travel advisor, that they could pull up an article that really gave them an insider's look, and hopefully an impartial look onto how things. So if they're typing, how does a travel agent make money? They'll pull up our article on, they'll mostly make it with commissions, but then they're also charging fees, and then it'll link to our fee article. So the blog is also a very popular component, and usually the way people come into our site. But there's a couple other things to mention too. So there's a jobs board on there that's pretty active for people that are looking for. Some people start out and they start their agency and then they discover, I don't really enjoy this. I would rather be an employee where the leads are coming to me. And like with Avoya, you're a great example of something that kind of meets in the middle because they're able to get the leads, because that's the hardest part for so many advisors. So there's the jobs board, and then we have a couple podcasts. We do our Friday 15 every Friday, where we answer industry questions that people have submitted. And then we do a quarterly podcast. And these are fun because they run a little bit longer and they're usually about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. But I talk with the advisor for probably 2 hours beforehand just to get to know their agency. And I pick out the pieces that I think are really unique and that have made them most successful. And then we condense that into the hour-long podcast where we're talking about things they've done that have been really successful. So it's kind of an inspirational podcast, and also an exploratory one for people that are new to the business. We try to find people in different niches. So you can be like, oh, I had no idea production travel existed. Wow, that's really neat. Or, oh, destination weddings sound really neat to me. And then I would say there's two other things. So one would be the event calendar, and Avoya always is great at putting up their events on there, but there's usually 70 plus industry events on there at any given time. So it's a great place for people to see what's coming up ahead. And you can also submit events for free if you're an advisor and you know of one and want other advisors to know about it. Like if you have a local ASTA chapter meeting or something you want to put on there. And then the last thing is our surveys we do, which is live right now. And those so far we have about 1,000 respondents this year. And we do the survey every year and then we publish reports from it. So these reports are really in depth. If you've never seen them, last year's was 55 pages. And we published one specifically for hosted advisors and then one for independently accredited advisors. And they're cited throughout the industry. You know, we really go in depth on what people are charging for fees, how many people are charging, what they're charging, how much they're charging for. And we really go into how much income people can make, which can really make a difference, and what they can kind of expect through the years. So it's tons and tons of data. And the survey every year is a great way for people to be able to give back to the industry and also get that data to help them benchmark as their agency grows where they should be.
How many total host agencies and franchise models are featured on your website?
Oh, we have, you know what? Let me just look because it's on our homepage. There's 225 listings, and I would say probably 10 or 15 of those are consortia. And so, yeah, I would say over 200.
I mean, it really goes to the heart of the matter, though, right? Because there's so many different ways to be successful in this industry. What are some of the things that you recommend to travel advisors to do to try to go through that list and find the ones that might be right for them, those that might not be the right fit?
Yes. So one of the big ways you can narrow down, and this is hard to do, but one of the big ways you can narrow down is kind of looking at the consortia level and seeing if there's a consortia that you particularly like. So I think the big one for that would be like Travel Leaders Network has the storefront agencies, and they're the largest network within the United States for travel agencies. If you know you want to be a part of that, to search down and just select Travel Leaders Network within the filters. That's one of the big ways to narrow it down. From there, there's other things to think about. Like I would say one of the big things you could look at is deciding on your end if you want to have a smaller, more boutique agency experience, or if you want to have the buying power, the infrastructure of a larger agency. You know, none is better than the other. It's just really what environment you're going to work better in. So thinking about that, and then you can sort by the number of advisors that they have. And then of course there's a big thing is money when it comes to, you can also search by the commission level. So if I would say, if you want to be earning X amount of commission, 70% or whatever it is, you can put that in the search filters and kind of filter that out. So I would say those are kind of the big ones people can be looking for. Within that, there's other filters like educational opportunities. And you can select in person or virtual. But I would say most agencies at this point in time for host agencies have some kind of an educational component. I would say the sales of the agency, the size of the agencies, the consortia they're aligned with, those are really kind of the easiest things to chew off. And then from there, you can kind of drill down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, seeing how it's a Travel Advisor Appreciation Month, what's your thoughts on the modern travel advisor and how they kind of fit into this modern picture, the whole sales cycle?
Well, I really think they're leading the way. I think the pandemic, for as terrible as it was, has done amazing things for the travel agency community. So having been in it for however many years, a couple decades, it's just so interesting to have seen. I feel like the pendulum has finally swung back in the other direction. It was coming back, but it was slow and it was kind of stuck. And I feel like the pandemic just totally swung it in the other direction because travel is so complex right now. It's very expensive. Like air is so expensive right now. If you're going to be spending money and that amount of money, you want to make sure you're going to have a good experience. And there's a lot of complexities with the COVID regulations, with the cancellations and tighter schedules, that it really makes sense to go with a travel advisor. And people that experienced the horrors during the pandemic of cancellations and having to get refunds, I think they have PTSD and will forever use a travel advisor because it was just such a horrible experience having to be your own advocate. And the travel advisors today, the technology that has come in within the last 10 years for travel agencies. Before, no one was investing with technology with travel advisors because it was like, oh, they're a dying breed. And the last 10 years, and I would say especially the last 4, because on our site, we get a lot of people that reach out that are startups. The amount of people that have venture capitalist backed travel agency specific software out there, I can think of like 4 off the top of my head, which is a pretty big deal. We've never had anything like that, as well as the great programs that are out there now, like Travel Joy and Travify and things along those lines. So I think the travel advisors are leading the way. They're going to play such an important role for travelers going forward.
So I said in my open that I've had a chance to be a guest on, a couple of the things that are hosted there by Host Agency Reviews. And I've answered this question when you've asked it, but now I get to turn the tables and ask you the same question. What do you think, Steph, are some of the traits that you see time and again that just go into making a great travel advisor?
Oh, yes. Okay. So first one I will say, and this is, I think, incredibly important, is a good salesperson. Like you can love travel all you want, you can be organized all you want, but if you cannot sell, that is going to be problematic. So I would say having, and this doesn't mean you need to be that like outgoing, really aggressive salesperson. There's so many different sales personalities that are out there. If you are passionate and knowledgeable about travel, that's going to come through, and that is sales. So I don't want people to think like, oh, I'm not like super outgoing and I'm not really aggressive, this isn't going to be for me. I have seen, and I'm sure you have too, Chris, advisors of all different personality types and sales techniques that do really, really well. So it's finding your voice. So I'd say sales is the big one. I think having specifically because we work with a lot of entrepreneurial travel advisors, I would say having that entrepreneurial mindset, which means you're kind of scrappy, like when you're starting out, you have to think outside the box. Like if you don't have huge amounts of money to work with, well, how can you make everything happen within there? And you really get creative as a new advisor or a new business owner doing that. And I think this is probably for most sales jobs, but I would say like relationships, being really great at building and maintaining relationships within our industry is so key, because it's not just relationships with clients, it's on the other side. You want to know the people at the resort and the cruise lines that can help make things happen for you. And keeping up those relationships is a really key thing.
Absolutely. I want to add on to one of the things you talked about being good at sales. One of the key resources that's offered by Avoya to our network is actually sales coaching and business coaching. So, for people that have that personality, but maybe haven't been in sales, there are certain tips and tricks and things like that that you can share with each other, right? I mean, to actually improve on that. I know you guys cover that all the time, like on your Friday 15 and stuff.
Yeah, but that's a great point, because it's like having that training is so nice. Even if you naturally are a salesperson, if you've never held a sales position, there's so many small, like you said, tips and tricks that all it takes is asking this question or putting this in your, signature line that can easily convert, even if it only converts 2 people a year. But if it's something you never have to touch again and all you do is put it in your signature line, then why wouldn't you do that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Normally, when I chat with you, you're sitting right there in your home office. It was great to see you in Las Vegas, last month. What about when you get out of the office? What kind of things do you like to do for fun away from host agency reviews?
Well, I have 2 dogs, so I love taking them out to dog parks or going for walks. They're kind of, you've probably heard me talk about them numerous times. I
Yeah, yeah.
love them so much. And another one of my big passions is gardening. And I love gardening. Like right now, Chris, they're on the other side of this wall with the TV. There is a bona fide greenhouse back there with like 500 plants. So I love growing them from seed, and I love doing plant identification. And this is a really nerdy thing that I bet you've never ever had anyone answer it this way. But so another one of my hobbies is bumblebee chasing. I love bumblebees. They're like little teddy bears in the sky. And I started getting into them maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. And I was like, they're so cute. And then like the University of Minnesota has something called the Bee Lab. It's a bee research station. And I've started volunteering there and doing like bumblebee identification. And so I'm like always around the neighborhood in the summer, taking pictures of bumblebees on plants and then going home and identifying them. And I've had people literally come out of their house and be like, can we help you? Because I'm on the sidewalk, but I'm maybe a little bit in their garden taking pictures.
That's funny. There's like a beehive somewhere where they're like, just out trying to get some honey, and this lady's chasing me again,
Yeah, it's an unusual thing, but I really love it. I don't know why.
That's hilarious. You talked about earlier a little bit about personal travel. We all know that personal travel is a big perk here in the travel industry. Does that trickle down to you and your staff as well?
Yeah, as a general rule. So a lot of ours end up being at conferences and different things, but because of the travel industry, they're oftentimes in like nice destinations. So oftentimes, like if I'm going to speak somewhere, I'll be able to travel, or it's usually if we're speaking or presenting somewhere. But sometimes we also get invited to go on like a media fam or something along those lines. So I traveled a lot more in the beginning of HAR than I do now with like 2 dogs, and sometimes my health issues make it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, it's really, I think when you're in the travel industry, you forget how fortunate you are that things plop into your, like, for instance, I won for the first time in my life something at a travel industry event. And I won like 2 tickets to Vienna last year, but I still haven't used them. Like I've been trying to like figure out a time that it fits in my schedule. And it was like someone was also from the cruise line said like, oh, we'll comp you like if you want to come on one of our river cruises when you're over there, let us know. It's like, where else does this happen? And a person would jump on it like that. And here's me being like, well, let's see, if I want to go to ASTA Legislative Day and then this, and I need to fit it in. And, it's 9 months later and I've yet to book it, but I will.
Absolutely. Hey, Steph, we got a couple more before we wrap up today. And I wanted to give you an open forum just to offer any piece of advice that you could share with maybe 2 separate audiences that watch our program. One, the experienced agent looking to take their business to that whole new level. And of course, 2, the new to the industry travel agent, just getting started, but really hoping to find something that provides early success.
Let's start with the new advisors. So I would say, and this kind of goes back to the building the relationships thing. I would say that the industry is very small. It's large, but it's very small, and people recycle within it. So make friends and network within there, and then really treat people kindly, because that person is likely going to still be in your life 5-10 years from now, and you're going to have to work with them at different vendors or at different agencies. So really try to keep that in mind. It's a very small family in a lot of ways. So you're going to want to, the other thing I would say for the new advisor is, as you're starting out, kind of build with the future in mind. And so in the beginning, it's tough because you don't have any clients. But the beauty of when you start your agency is you have a lot more time, and you probably don't have the money, but that's the time you should be really thinking of, like, can this scale as my agency grows? If I'm starting out, like, whatever my workflow is, make it so that it can scale, so that when you start becoming busier on year 2 and year 3, that you're not having to focus on these things. So if you can try to think ahead, I think that's a great advice for new advisors. And on the experience side, so I think one of the things that we don't talk a lot about in the industry is, for those experienced agencies, again, kind of looking at the scaling thing. So if you want to end up hiring and bringing on employees or independent contractors, the way that you can do that and do it well is you have to have an infrastructure set up. And this kind of, we talk for the new advisors about setting that up for scale, but to start thinking about having protocols and standard operating procedures, or SOPs, so that when you hire on somebody new, there's a standard operating procedure. Essentially, what you should be doing is thinking about how you can take yourself out of your business, even though you're going to still be in your business. But this makes it so that you're replaceable, so that when you hire someone on, you can say, all right, here's my SOP on what I do when I'm bringing on a new employee. We need to have them sign this, and here's our handbook. I know of very few agencies that have handbooks for their employees. Setting up things like that. And the other benefit for that is, when you're preparing your company so it can run without you, it makes it easier so that if something comes up in life where you decide you want to sell, or you need to step back from it, that things are in place and you're not having to scramble at the end. And I think that's something that we don't really talk about, like kind of thinking about, if you ever leave your agency or need to step back from it, how can you make it so that it's a valuable asset that you can sell, or hand it over to a manager where everything's set up for them, so they're set up for success.
Great advice. Absolutely fantastic advice there. All right, one last question. We got to boogie through this one because we're up against the hard stop here in just a little bit. But I love to ask this to all my guests, because everybody comes from such varied backgrounds. But are you optimistic about the future of leisure travel, and for what reasons?
Oh, yes, 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 and yes. Very much so. I think we've just seen people want to travel so much. And I think it also ties into the amount of interest we see in people wanting to become a travel advisor, is also tied into that, like this idea of wanting travel to be a lifestyle. And so the numbers on our site in January were up 60% from the year previously. So the amount of people that are looking at travel as a lifestyle and doing, hi, buddy, puppy just came in.
I saw.
I'm incredibly optimistic about it. I know there's fears with AI and different things like that, but there's nothing that can, people are going to continue to want to travel to all these gorgeous places. And there's nothing that can replace a travel advisor's experience and expertise when it comes to booking with an advisor.
Perfect way to wrap up. Stephanie Lee, everyone, founder of Host Agency Review. Steph, so great to have you on this side of the Q&A this time. Really appreciate your time. Look forward to catching up with you and your staff soon.
Sounds perfect. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Absolutely. Next week, more new guests at On Deck with Avoya. In fact, we're welcoming 2 new guests, but representing just one of our amazing affiliates, as Ryan Warshaw and his partner Dave Levine, owners of Epic Johns LLC, an independent agency in the Avoya network, join us for a Meet the Network segment. That'll be next Thursday at our normal time. All right, so we just really quickly want to touch on our promotions, including our ongoing, at least through the month of May, waived fee for promotion for an experienced travel advisor. Again, the key takeaway from this, over $100,000 in gross sales in the last year. That's either calendar year or year to date. My team is more than happy to work with you and get you qualified on that. AvoyaNetwork.com is the best place to go. We've got our military promotion ongoing for those that have served, that do serve. and their spouse is taking off $100 off the affiliation fee. Again, reach out. We would love to get you qualified for that. If you're new to the industry and you haven't gotten started yet, we really believe, and for us, it's a foundation, education is so important. And ours is powered by Avoya, the travel agent education powered by Avoya, this amazing, dynamic, comprehensive. And the results are just amazing. You take that, you get a free membership in CLIA, free membership in ASTA, and finish it in a timely manner. You get a discount on affiliating with the Avoya Travel Network. Again, we're more than happy to get you qualified at avoyanetwork.com for that. We have the resources. We touched on a few of them with Steph, like sales coaching and business coaching through our Foundations for Early Success program, our brand sales team. And then, of course, there's the support, there's the technology, there's the marketing. We've got it going on, and we're happy to show you all of the details. Again, reach out to us, avoyanetwork.com, and we'd be more than happy to answer all of your questions. Hey, don't forget, don't follow us. We've got stuff to share. All of our social media at Avoya Travel Network. That's Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, and all of our previous episodes are housed there on YouTube as well. So we would love to keep in touch with you. And you can always reach out to me, right? My email is pretty simple, chris.greene@avoyatravel.com. There's the phone number. There's our website. Just reach out. Thank you for making time today. We really appreciate it. Big thanks to Steph Lee from Host Agency Reviews. Big thank you to Annabella for doing a wonderful job in producing our segment today. Thank you for being part of it. We've got Ryan and Dave next week on Thursday on Deck with Avoya. Until then, take care, everyone.